Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, and Disney all spent weeks and weeks building up Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, telling everybody that this is the start of Phase 5. We're done with Phase 4. Yeah, nobody liked Phase 4. It was a disaster, both at the box office and on Disney Plus streaming. But Phase 5 was going to be different. And Ant-Man and the Wasp was the most important movie since Endgame. You have to go out and watch it. You need to come out and see it. And not only have the critics kind of bashed this movie, when you look at the cinema score, the audience reaction from coming out of the theaters, they're not big fans of it either. Ant-Man 3 receives worst audience score in MCU history, a B cinema score, right down there with Eternals, meaning that when people went to see this in the theater, it did not live up to their expectations. And now we finally have the official box office opening weekend numbers, and they're abysmal, despite the fact that the mainstream media, everybody's doing everything they can to convince you that this is great, this is incredible. Look, it's the biggest opening in franchise history, meaning the Ant-Man franchise. That is a true statement. It is the biggest opening in franchise history. Unfortunately, it's also the biggest budget in franchise history by a long shot. $200 million production budget, plus a massive marketing budget, including a Super Bowl ad. This movie needs to make approximately $600 million just to break even. And with numbers like this, it's going to be a while before it hits that number. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania has box office buzzing with a $104 million debut. And, you know, when you look at globally, it's a big disappointment. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania flies to $225 million worldwide opening amid softness in Asia Pacific. If you want some reference for just how bad that number is, look no further than what they were saying just a few days before. Ant-Man and the Wasp looks to swell the franchise best $280 million global opening. They were short by nearly $60 million of what they expected it would be. And in reality, if we want to make these comparisons, I know everybody wants to talk about, it did better than Ant-Man 1 and 2 which both had $130 million budgets. Really, what should we be comparing this to? Well, Thor Love and Thunder, which had a global debut of over $300 million, because this is really what this was supposed to be targeting. This type of number, $760 million, they could have walked away and said, we feel pretty good about that. This is so far off those numbers, it's not even close. Ant-Man and the Wasp right now, with what we've seen opening weekend, even with China, that's the thing. Ant-Man and the Wasp has the addition of a Chinese release, and it's still at that level. This is pathetically bad. This is now on pace to maybe hit $600 million. I feel like I'm in a Twilight Zone or something, because I was having these same arguments with these people not that long ago. Do you remember all the way back in July? Oh, everyone's saying, look, Thor 4 has thunderous franchise best opening. It was better than Thor Ragnarok. And I sat there and I said, yeah, it was better than Thor Ragnarok, but one, this budget is way higher, and two, MCU movies are not having the same holds. They're not having 55, 60% drops like we saw early in Marvel. They're having massive drop-off second weekend, and somehow these people have not learned. They're saying the same exact thing about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Yes, it's bigger than Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's bigger than the original Ant-Man. It's also got a much bigger budget. It's also going to have a much higher drop-off. And right now, with $104 million domestically and $121 million globally, it is a huge, huge disappointment from where they expected to be. And this spells disaster for Disney, much like Thor Love and Thunder. And if you came here, if you watch this channel, you know from the beginning, I was spot on about Thor Love and Thunder. Despite the media saying that, despite other YouTubers predicting some things about Thor Love and Thunder and saying, how could you think that's a disappointment? Well, it's because the reality is these box office openings are much bigger for Marvel now than they were 5 years ago, but then they fall off. They drop off completely because the general audience has walked away. They want nothing to do with the MCU anymore. Now you have a movie that needs to make $600 million to break even with Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. All of a sudden, you have a movie that's on pace with that opening compared to Thor. This is now a movie that's on pace to maybe hit $600 million, which would be less than Ant-Man and the Wasp all the way back in 2018. This is a huge, huge problem for Marvel. This opening weekend is a box office disaster. And unless something drastic happens within the next couple weeks, it should have a decent Monday because it's a holiday. But unless something drastic happens, it has an incredible drop, something like that, nothing's going to save this. This will be yet another box office disappointment, a disaster for Marvel. And it looks like Phase 5 is going to start off the same exact way that we saw Phase 4 come to a close. This is pathetic, but this is the MCU.